Good morning, Kelsey. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. How are you?
It's good. I'm super excited to have you on. We obviously share a player in common that we both train, so that's how we got connected. So I appreciate you making the time to take away from training and your busy schedule to talk about your journey thus far playing soccer.
Yeah, of course. I'm super excited.
All right, so I'm curious when your soccer journey started because I know that you were born in Utah with your family and you guys
Mhm.
ultimately settled in Elk Grove. So take me through when you started, where you started, and how it all began.
Yeah, so I was born in Utah. I started playing soccer when I was like 4. As soon as I could walk, that was like the sport I wanted to play. So yeah, I just started I played some other sports like before that, like swim, gymnastics, like the normal. But then soccer really was just the sport that I loved the most, and so just kind of carried on playing that ever since.
And so I know like Angel City has you listed as like a defender, but I also saw a midfielder when I was doing some research. So where did you play like in the youth system and like do you actually like embrace being a defender? Because it's rare to meet players who are
Yeah.
actually enjoy stopping someone from scoring a goal. Usually, it's quite the opposite. So I'm curious, like where you are.
Yeah. During club, like AYSO and everything when I was really tiny, just kind of played everywhere. Like,
Uh,
but then club growing up, I started playing defense. And then when I was at St. Mary's, that's where I went to
mhm.
school first. I kind of played everywhere there. I played outside back, I played the six, the 10, the eight, like just kind of got tossed around everywhere.
Yeah.
And then when I transferred to Pepperdine, I played the six a little bit there too. So mostly defensive positions like holding mid or anywhere in the back line. But yeah, I actually do really enjoy being a defender.
Yeah.
It is by choice. Um, I don't know. I just think it's a different challenge, and I've never really been the player that like wants the glory and like scoring the goal.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I enjoy my job stopping goals and playing that part. It's in my head, it's, like, more competitive in a way of, like, they're trying to get past me and I have
Hmm.
to stop them. Um, and yeah, I love it.
So I'm curious, has anyone during your like youth talked about like tactical professional fouls? Because it's kind of a tricky conversation depending on your age. Because as a coach, like I don't want to encourage, fouling, but at the same time, the
Mhm.
reality is, especially at the level that you're at now, it's like that's part of the game. And obviously you do it in a professional way based on because you're in transition and instead of giving up an
Mhm.
easy cross or a shot maybe. So like did anyone ever as a club coach or was it something like innate that like you just started doing because you saw it? Like how did that come about?
It kinda got introduced slowly, like, at the end of club,
Mm.
they started talking about it, like, "Okay, if someone's going and you're the last person, like, you gotta do something." But, and then especially in college, it's definitely talked about, like, and being very smart about it. Like, you
Mm.
don't wanna obviously get a red card or get thrown out of the game or anything like that.
Mm.
But being tactical and being smart, and even more so, professionally now, like, we talk about it often, and it is very tactical. Like,
Mhm.
sometimes even taking a foul earlier in the game just so we could, like, have a second to, like, talk about tactics, come over to the side, and, like, reassess our game plan or change it or stick with what we're doing, just like a quick talk about it and then
Mhm.
go back. So it's definitely increased as you get older and like the level goes up.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You mentioned multiple positions, so I know like Jenna also did that where she bounced around a lot, and I feel like a lot of players sometimes feel like they should be pigeonholed. So in
Mhm.
like in your opinion, like is there a lot of value being able to move around a lot? Like so now that you are playing more where like they're coming at you, like and if you did play a little bit in those roles where you were attacking at those players, now you're maybe thinking what they're thinking. Um
Mhm.
so like yeah, what has been your experience about playing like multiple positions?
Um it's tough. Like sometimes when you're being tossed around and you're like man, like, what is my position? Like, you kinda,
Mm,
like, lose, like you forget what you're really good at almost and, like, what strengths help you in these different positions.
mhm,
But pretty much all the coaches I've had are like, it is huge to be versatile. Like, if you can only play, like, right center back or only left back, like, it does put you in a spot where if someone's in your position who's older than you, more experienced than you, like, you're just kinda waiting till
mhm,
either, like, they're hurt or they graduate in college, and so being able to play different positions, I think, is huge, and it is difficult, like I said, like, sometimes you get confused and you're like, "What position should I be playing?"
mhm.
But being able to be versatile is huge, for sure.
Um, so you mentioned both St. Mary's and Pepperdine. So the question that came to my mind actually was, what was it like playing for like two different colleges in the same conference? Because that must have
Mhm.
been a unique situation with like teammates and coaches and like knowing like strategy. Like, what was that experience like?
Yeah, it was difficult to be sure.
Mm,
So I transferred from St. Mary's after my sophomore spring, or during my sophomore spring. So I was at St. Mary's for a year and a half, and then I decided to transfer to Pepperdine.
mhm,
Um, and the coach who was there at the time actually, like, blocked me. I don't know if that's the correct terminology, but said I couldn't play. So I had to redshirt for a year at Pepperdine.
mhm,
So fully healthy, could practice everything. I just couldn't play in the games. And like I appealed it to the NCAA, tried to fight it, but the decision stuck. So that was really tough because I was fully able. It's not like sometimes when you redshirt, you're hurt or you don't
yeah.
think you're gonna play or something like that. But yeah, so that was very difficult, and it was always weird playing St. Mary's. Like once I had transferred, it was cool, like seeing my friends and everything who were still there,
Mhm,
but it was always weird. It was always weird, like going back to St. Mary's, especially playing there. And then towards the end when, like, almost all the people I knew had graduated and it was a fully new team,
mhm.
it was super odd.
And how did you get recruited to St. Mary? Like, what was your process like? Like, did you have multiple destinations that you were looking at, or was it a certain showcase that you kind of narrowed it down based on talking to maybe certain coaches and had those experiences? Like, what led you to initially go to St. Mary's?
Um, I was kinda late in
Mm,
the whole, like, recruiting process, to be honest, like, my parents didn't really know, like, how it went, and so I was, like, talking to my coaches and getting help there,
mm,
and my parents were trying to help me. We just, like, didn't know how it went really.
yeah.
Um And so I was a little bit late in the process. And so I was talking to St. Mary's. I was talking to Pepperdine at the same time as well, before I committed anywhere. And then there was like a tournament or something where ASU saw me and was talking to ASU. So I was talking to like a little pool of schools, but then it just kind of like there's a lot of factors. It depends like
Mhm,
how a school plays, how much you would be playing at that school, like what your journey would be like. So um, there were some really amazing assistant coaches at St. Mary's when I was being recruited, and they just kinda, like they were amazing, and
mm,
so I always tell people and people told me, like, "You should not go to a school because of the coaches," and I ended up doing that,
uh-huh.
and then the coaches left.
Yeah.
Um, so, yeah, that's kinda how I ended up at St. Mary's, and, like, I wouldn't take back my time there. I loved it, like,
Mhm.
the friends I made there and just the experiences with soccer and without soccer I was able to have there were insane.
Did you always believe that you could play at the highest level in college? Like, was there a moment during a practice or a game, or was there a coach influence, or was it yourself? Was it your folks that were just like you knew like I have a pretty good shot. Like nothing's guaranteed, but
Mhm.
was there a moment that you were like I can play Division One?
Um, I don't know if I would necessarily say there was a moment. That was just kinda always the idea in my head of,
Mm,
like it was just always the goal. The goal was always to play professionally, and so I kinda
mm,
knew, like, okay, to play professionally, I probably need to play D1. Like, that's just, like, the steps to take, and
Mhm,
so it was just always kind of in my head of, like, "Okay, I need to play D1 if I want to get to my goals later."
mhm. How you mentioned because of that year when you transferred to Pepperdine, you couldn't play.
Mhm,
How even now as a professional, like how how hard is it one to be engaged when you're not playing after doing all this prep and then you can't play? Especially well in Pepperdine's situation, you know you would not play. Angel
mhm.
City obviously could be a different story, but like what would be what has been your experience with like the mental side of the game when you're not able to play when you're fully healthy, and how do
Mhm.
you like push yourself to stay like in it during the game?
Yeah. It was super difficult, I'm not gonna lie to you. Um, just being I was just angry, to be
Mm.
honest, like,
Yeah, yeah.
being fully able to play and,
Hmm.
like, in the moment, it felt like the world was ending. I'm like, "I'm not gonna be able to play pro, like, I'm taking a whole year off, like,
Mm.
this is crazy." But that's kinda like college and anyone's soccer journey, I feel like it never goes how you think it will go.
Hmm.
Like, I didn't think I was gonna transfer, I didn't think that I would have to redshirt, and then
Hmm.
COVID in the middle, so
Yeah.
I had to redshirt for that year where I couldn't play, and then COVID was right after that, so it was, like, 2 years in the middle of my college, like, career that were kinda, like, scrapped in a way,
Hmm.
um, but staying in it mentally when I couldn't play for practice and things, it wasn't that difficult. I was able to do a lot of extra, which was
Mm.
nice because during season, like, there's certain loads and you're playing games, so you have to be careful about, like, how much you're doing and what the load is like, and
Hmm.
so because I wasn't playing, I was able to do a lot of extra, which I think actually really helped me.
Mm.
So that was a big part for sure.
I would imagine too the love you have for the game is immense.
Mhm.
I know you're a fan of Mia Hamm, which I'm sure most girls are. I actually remember
Yeah.
reading her book. It's like the green cover. It's like the really old one, like Go for the Goal. I think it's called Go for the
Yeah,
Goal. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, so like, does that also help when you're doing something you love, even though you're not able to do it maybe to the highest level in terms of playing the actual game, but does having that burning passion just also help you?
Yeah. I think, like, having a why like that is
Mm,
honestly probably the only thing that got me through. Like, if I didn't have that passion and love for the game, then I think it would have been really easy to just kinda, like, simmer out and not
mm-hmm.
like, come back and be able to play and, like, have a season like we had. Um, so I think, yeah, without it, I don't think I would have still been playing, to be honest.
Yeah. Um, and if you don't mind me asking, I also read that you had an injury in 2022 that sounds like it was pretty significant and long.
Mhm.
Um, do you mind sharing about what happened and what
Yeah.
happened in that situation?
Yeah, so it was my last season. So, okay, so I transferred, had to redshirt, COVID,
Okay.
and then I had 1 season where I was able to play.
Okay.
Pepperdine, we did really well. We went to, like, the Sweet 16, lost to Florida
Hmm.
State. And then my next season, I was gonna graduate after that. That was, like, my time, but I still had an extra year of eligibility,
Hmm.
and I wanted to play professionally, and I didn't think that, like, after my only 1 year of playing and having 2 years before that where I, like, have no film, couldn't be seen. So, I took my last year of eligibility, and in preseason, one of our preseason games in, like, September,
Uh-huh.
so, like, very beginning of the season,
Hmm.
we were playing Cal, at Cal, so we had bused there, long bus ride, like,
Yeah, 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 got you.
really long from
Uh-huh.
here with traffic, everything. So we were playing Cal, and it was, like, the last 5 minutes of the game.
Oh no.
I was up for a header, like, up an attacking header. So I jumped, and someone hit me from behind, so I couldn't see, and so I landed on my left leg,
Hmm.
and I was just off balance, and I felt and heard a pop in my hip,
Oh
and
no.
I was
Oof.
like, "Oh my gosh." And so I
Ouch.
like took me a while to get up,
Yeah.
and I was like, something's definitely wrong. Like I felt it as soon.
Hmm.
I just knew. I was
Hmm.
like, that wasn't normal. Um, and so played the rest of the game, bust home, whatever.
Wait. You played the rest of the game?
Yeah, I stayed in for the rest of the game. It was only like 5 minutes. We were
Okay,
at the end
okay,
of the game.
okay.
But yeah, I was hobbling around.
But still, I mean, it sounds like a pretty significant injury, as we'll get to. But like, you kept
Yeah,
playing. Wow. Okay. All right.
yeah.
That says a lot. All right.
Um, but then I came in the next day, like, when we had gotten back, and my trainer was like, "Oh, wow, you are not moving well." And I was like, "Yeah, this doesn't feel right." So I went and got an X-ray,
Hmm.
and they at first, I thought I tore my labrum because just where it was and everything, they thought it was a labrum tear.
Okay.
So got an X-ray, couldn't see really, got an MRI, and then that's when they were like, "Oh, it looks like you have a fracture too." And so I was like, "Oh my gosh, okay." Got a CT scan so they could, like, fully see everything,
Hmm.
and turns out I didn't have the labrum tear, just
Okay.
had the fracture, which is actually really good
Okay.
because if it was the labrum and a fracture, I would have had to, like, wait for the fracture to heal and then start PT on my labrum. So it just would have been, like, really drawn out, and
Hmm.
labrums are really tough just because, like, the rehab and everything, it's just hard
Yeah.
to come back from. But so it was just a fracture, which is good, which was exciting at the time.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was kind of the same thing of when I had to redshirt. I was like, I can't play anymore, like my career is over, like whole mental breakdown.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so I was hoping that I would get back for the end of season, and I tried to speed up my rehab. I was like talking to my trainer. I was like, "Come on, when are we jogging? When are we jogging?"
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But with like especially with a hip, if it is like displaced at all, they're concerned about it. So
Sure.
I was on crutches for like 4 weeks,
Oh wow.
and then I was supposed to be on one crutch for another week, and I was like, "No, I'm
You're like,
done with
nah.
crutches." Like,
Kick it to the side.
yeah. But then it took another 4 weeks before I was like actually like able to like sprint and do stuff like that. So it was like 2
Oh my
months. So
gosh.
I was out for the rest of our season.
So it sounds like it was like this big dip in terms of like the mental, and then you kind of like picked yourself back. So like, I'm curious, like when you get this far down mentally, and you're obviously a very
Mhm.
strong person, just by speaking to you, I can tell you're very resilient. Like, what helps you as someone that's at that level of an athlete? Like, we always hear stories about like Mamba mentality and all these other athletes that we see on a huge stage, but like,
Mhm.
you're on a huge stage and you just had this major injury and you're in this low. Like, what sparks the trajectory back up?
Um, it kinda goes back to what I was saying of, like, just the why. Like,
Mm.
I knew I still wanted to play professional soccer, and that's
Hmm.
been my goal since I was literally, like, 4. You mentioned
Yeah.
Mia Hamm, like, the picture of, like, all of them in the 99ers, like,
Hmm.
Granny Chastain taking her shirt off after a
Uh-huh.
PK, so, like,
Uh-huh.
I think it's just all that, like, I still knew that's what I wanted to do, that's always been my goal, and so, like, with that, it was just, like, little steps. I was excited when I didn't have to use crutches anymore and I could walk, and, like,
Hmm.
I would I went to the pool, my roommate and I would go to the pool every morning before practice, so this is, like, 5 AM. I'm, like,
Aw.
crutching over to the pool just 'cause, like, I could walk in there. Like, it took so much of the weight off that I could
Hmm.
actually walk and, like,
Hmm.
get some mobility back kind of.
Yeah.
And so it was just like the little wins and like the tiny steps getting back to where I wanted to be. And it was like looking forward to being able to jog again. And like I really pushed it on my rehab. Like we did.
You poor PT people, man. They're
I
like,
know they were so upset with me. But
uh-huh.
do you know BFR, blood flow restriction? They like put a
Mm.
cuff around your
Oh yeah, yeah,
leg.
yeah,
And
yeah. I've seen it.
so,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so it restricts blood flow. So the point is like to work out the muscles that you can't really use, like I was on crutches. So
Right.
it's still a way to work out the muscles, and, like, it's the same as, like, a heavy weightlifting session, but not actually doing that. So, like, I was doing BFR all the time, trying to do everything to get back as fast as
Uh-huh.
possible. But, yeah, it's what I love and what I wanna do, and so in my head, there were for sure doubts, like,
Mhm.
I would have my moments where I was like, "How am I gonna play?" Like, I have no film from this season now, I'm back to where I was before, and so, I guess getting out of that, like, my teammates, my coaches, like, all my family support were a huge help in that.
You keep mentioning film a lot. So is something as a player like yourself who is going up those ranks, because I before I jump into like Angel City and stuff, like for a player who loves the game, when did you actually start breaking down film? Like not necessarily having film, like like a highlight reel where you can send it to
Yeah.
like a college and get recruited, but
Mhm.
more like when did you at like what age or when did you actually sit down and go like, okay, I'm gonna watch either it's your game or a professional game or a college game and break it
Yeah.
down?
Um, I didn't start breaking my own film down till probably college when I had, like yeah,
Man, I
yeah.
just it's so intriguing because I have this conversation with almost all of my interviews and I just think it's mind blowing. Like,
Mhm.
because I have 9-year-old boys that I coach and we do film and
Yeah.
only for 30 minutes, obviously. And it's obviously like
Mhm.
very like simple topics, right? And usually
Yeah.
it's like teams that they love to watch, like Liverpool or like someone big, right?
Mhm.
But man, so tell me more about this because I like when you started watching it at the college level, did it really help?
Yeah, it was so helpful. We would break down games. We didn't really have film of practice,
Mm,
so it was mostly, like, breaking down games, but,
hmm
like, going back and watching the game, like, in the moment, you're like, "I had no options, like, I didn't know where to
hmm
go," and then you go and
Right.
look, and you're like, "It is so obvious, I should
Yeah.
pass it right there."
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, I think, like, earlier, a lot of times we didn't even have film of our games.
Mm,
Like, in, club and stuff like that, like,
hmm
sometimes it wasn't even, like, recorded or an option or the quality was so bad that, like, we couldn't even watch it or tell who you were. Um, but yeah, it's so helpful. I do it with this little girl I train, we go over film, and
hmm
I tell people all the time, like, "Start watching sooner." Like, it is so helpful, and just your, like, soccer IQ goes up so much, I
hmm
think. Um But yeah, I didn't really and now, like, at the pro level, we watch film all the time,
hmm
like, of practice, of games, the scout before, like, every day we have practice, we have a meeting and do film before.
So I started doing film as a coach. So my coaching mentor, when I was 24, 25, I started to go to his office once a week and he would put up a old school projector on like a white wall and we'd watch
Mhm.
like just moments of like Champions League and he would just start breaking it down. And he
Yeah.
had coached two national teams. So I was like notebook in hand and I was like, totally like locked
Mhm.
in. And what was crazy was fast forward though, I started doing film just like 3 years ago with like one or two individual players. And it was interesting. Like, I totally had forgotten how my IQ jumped even that much more. Like,
Mhm.
and so I started doing it actually with this like 9-year-old girl watching film once a week. And now she's been doing it for almost 3 years now. So she's almost 12.
Oh, wow.
And I just threw her in talking about multiple positions. Like she loves actually defending. Like she like
Mhm.
Snickers, like when you don't score a goal. So,
Yeah.
but I now play her at like a attacking mid, like a false nine,
Mhm.
because it was so interesting. Like I plugged her in there, she just made so many good decisions, and it's like,
Yeah.
yes, you have to be technical, but like you also have to make really good decisions, like regardless of where you're
Mhm.
playing on the field. So and it's funny, like her teammates, other coaches, parents, referees are like, "What's with this girl?" And it's like, she's been watching film. So
Yeah.
it's obviously there's so many different puzzle pieces to to do for training, but I feel
Mhm.
like, and I'm curious why you think it is, but like I feel like the film is like the last piece, and it's like so interesting to me. And now I try to not be single-minded, like you should only do film. Like I
Mhm.
understand that you need to do everything, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I just feel like I'm curious why you think like it's a non-factor, like clubs, like ECNL clubs, like they don't do film. Some of them,
Mhm.
right? I'm not saying all. Like I'm sure there's
Yeah.
some pockets here that do it, and it's intriguing as to why they don't. And I think it's because the coach isn't comfortable breaking down maybe and doing it in a way where it's positive. Because the biggest advice I got, Kelsey, is when you do film, you don't want to single out by using players' names. Like, so if we're doing
Mhm.
a team film session and I'm like, okay, Kelsey, you see right here, you should have done this, you should have done that.
Yeah.
You're gonna feel like, hey man, like maybe
Mhm.
I had a bad day that day. Like you don't know what's going on. So
Yeah.
it's more like, hey, if you're playing the six and you're in this part of the field in the middle third and it's this moment in an action, what are your options? What should you be looking for as a six? And so other sixes that are in that team are going like, oh, okay, like I'm going to learn off of that
Mhm.
position. So, but yeah, back to the original question, like I think it's great you're doing it with some of the kids that you train. But like, why is it not a factor?
That's a great question, and I don't even really know the answer. I think a great point is what you said of, like, maybe coaches not feeling comfortable because I've definitely had some, like, film sessions where people will get, like, called out,
Mm,
and I don't necessarily think that's super productive. Like, you
mm,
made a mistake, and then,
mm,
like, just adding on to it and, like, really going at someone isn't
mm,
always very productive. Um, and then also how you were saying, like, a 6 in this position, so other people can who also play the 6 are like, "Oh, okay, let me study this."
mm,
Sometimes in film, like, when it's based on, like, certain people and a name, then it's like, "Oh, that's for them. That doesn't really apply to me." And I think that's a huge part too of just, like, how film is gone over.
mm,
Um, but I think that's the same, like, there's 4 pillars of the game, right? Like technical, tactical, physical, mental. And I think the mental side gets left off a lot too.
sure. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that goes into like the tactical and film also. Like I think film goes into the mental side of the game and the tactical side. And I think those 2 get like forgotten about a lot. And it's really all 4 that you have to pour into if you want to be like a well-rounded, like amazing soccer player.
Yeah, I think that's the conversation I have nowadays. It's like, what's your goal? Okay. If this is your goal, here are the 4 pillars, right? So I use the
Mhm.
acronym TIPS, which is it's exactly what you just said: technical, insight, personality, speed. Just it's
Mhm.
all the same kind of stuff. And and so if you're not working on all 4 throughout your weeks and training sessions, like yeah, I agree with you. Like you're just gonna be like one more step behind. But here's the kicker though, Kelsey. You still played for St. Mary's and Pepperdine, and you didn't
Mhm.
start doing film until you were in college. So that's what
Yeah.
to me is mind-boggling.
Mhm.
So I feel like, man, imagine the Kelseys who do end up playing Division One who haven't done film yet. Imagine how much 5% better decisions they can make. Or like
Mhm.
I think that's also what is maybe people are going like, well, I don't have to do it because look, they got there and they weren't doing these things. And so
Mhm.
and then it goes back to like the passion, right? Like
Yeah.
how much do you love the game? Because so I'm curious if a club coach or a private trainer approached you and your family about doing film at 13, 12 years old, would you have been ready at that age to be like, okay, yeah, like I'll do this, or yeah, I see value in this?
Mhm. I don't know. I
It's
wanna
hard, I
say
know.
yes. I
Mm,
wanna say that, like, I would be like, "Yes, this I should do this," but I think it's also one of those things that you don't understand how much it helps you until you start doing it.
mm.
Like,
Well said. Well
y
said.
yeah, like, you don't see it, and, like I said, like, you're missing things in the game that you don't see,
Hmm.
until you go back and look at it in film.
Hmm.
And so I think it's just one of those things that, like, you need to do it and, like, consistently do it to see, like, a huge result, and so I don't know
To
what I
wrap
would
up
have
that
said.
film conversation, I feel like we can go on about this. It's awesome.
Yeah.
The way I've started phrasing it now is to the teams is like all we want to do is minimize mistakes and maximize opportunities. So
Mhm.
you're never going to be perfect. That's
Yeah.
fine. But if you have 10 situations of this situation, can 7 of the times we do it pretty close to perfect? And then 3 of the times we completely bosh it. And like it is what it is, but it's only 3 times. And hopefully those 3 times don't punish us as much as doing it 6 times.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you approach it that way, where it's like you're just trying to reduce the amount of mistakes,
Mhm.
and never be like, and also too, it's always situational. So I love when players. I'm sure you've had this experience where a player of yours that you're training is like, "What should I do in this situation?" Blank, and you're like, "Well, what part of the field are you on? What's the score?
Mhm.
Like, is it windy? Is it not
Yeah.
windy? Like, what is there so many? Like, so many. Are you home? Are you away? Like, how you feeling? Are you
Yeah.
tired? Is it like in the 80th minute? Like, so a lot of it's situational, but I feel like I don't know. I It gives me hope for someone like yourself who's as you're still playing, you're helping develop other players that you are also doing film.
Mhm.
So we can talk more about that maybe later on. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's super cool that you're doing that now. How did you end up at Angel City? How did that whole thing happen?
Um, yeah, so I put my name in the draft. I
Mm,
kinda knew I wasn't gonna get drafted. I didn't play my last season, like I said, like, my
mm,
name just wasn't really out there.
mm-hmm,
Um, so I put my name in the draft, didn't get drafted, and then what happens is, like, with professional teams, they'll invite some players to preseason
mm-hmm,
and then evaluate them, see, like, if they'll make anyone, like, an offer for a contract.
mm-hmm.
Um, so I was just talking to everyone. I was asking my college coach to help me. Like, it's really hard to find um, professionals like emails or contacts. They don't put it everywhere because everyone would be talking to them, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I was like, I would go on and find like like at angelcityfc.com or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying like first name, period, last name. I
Wow,
was
look at
trying,
you, man. That's
yes, I
awesome.
was I was grinding trying to find like
Kudos, man.
anyone's anyone's information.
Uh-huh.
And I was sending my highlight video, I was sending my player CV, like my resume,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just trying to, because at that point I had done my rehab, I was fully back. I was training to go to someone's preseason. Um, and so I was doing that, and Angel City ended up responding. They Angel City did their first preseason at Pepperdine, and
Ah,
so we had played them, and so they kind of like maybe knew who I was, remembered like my name maybe.
sure.
Um, but yeah, so I ended up getting invited to their preseason, and it was like I think a month, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and then
Mm-hmm.
they ended up signing one girl, Mac Pluck, my teammate now. She's insane. She played at Duke and she got
Mm-hmm.
invited to the preseason and she got a full contract. Um, but then they met with me and they're like, "We're not going to offer you a contract at this time." Um, like they were really nice. Like, let me know how we can help you. Like, we can help you overseas or whatever. And I was talking to the coach, Freya, at the time, and I was like, "I really wanna be here. Like, what can I do to continue to be here?" And, like, I know I'm not at the level yet, like, the speed of play is just insane going from college to pro. And so, I was still like, my hip I was back, I just didn't have, like, the confidence yet
Mm-hmm.
of,
Sure.
like, fully being back. And so I just needed more time, and so I said that, and they ended up letting me stay and be a practice player. And then when the World Cup came around and people left from our team, I got signed as a national team replacement player,
Mm-hmm.
and then they extended my contract to the rest of the year. So, That's kind of
Resilience 101.
yeah,
Just
pretty
man,
much.
you're like you're like the fly. You're like you won't go away. You're just buzzing
Yes.
around, man.
I was
Like
literally just I was like, "Just keep me there, just please."
man,
Annoying
gosh.
them at that point, but yeah.
I just think it's great to hear your journey because it's everyone has their own, and
Mhm.
like Jenna was obviously different, where she got drafted and this and that,
Yeah.
and that's like the what
Mhm.
you see on TV. But yours is
Yeah.
like just another road, and it just shows like if you have the why for whatever it is that you want to do,
Mhm.
and you truly have that why, like you're gonna find like when you were, I was giggling inside when you were talking about the whole at stuff because I'm a huge fan
Yeah.
of the podcast Diary of a CEO, and he was
Mhm.
talking about how people would message him and like DM him and like they would just be like, any jobs? Like that would be their like initial like that'd be their first thing they said versus like what you did where it's like, I really want to be here. What can I do? Blah, 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 blah. I
Mhm.
know I'm not there yet, but like I want to bring value eventually. So then the person who's hearing that's like they're excited now and there's gonna be
Mhm.
synergy. So
Yeah.
man, that is such an awesome story. I'm so happy for you. Like it doesn't even affect
Thank
me
you.
obviously at all, but like I'm just happy for you because I just mentally know how hard you pushed to put yourself in that position. So
Mhm.
you mentioned the speed of play. So
Yeah.
here's a great question. So how do you prepare for that? So if you're exiting college or you're playing in the ECNL and you're 16, 17, how can you start preparing yourself for the NWSL?
Um, in the winter after I had broke my hip, I was
Mm-hmm.
training I had this guy I was training with, he had a group of us who wanted to play in the NWSL,
Mm-hmm.
and there were some Angel City players just, like, they happened to be at the park we were training at,
Mm-hmm.
and so we ended up training with them, like, the rest of the winter
Wow.
and just
That's so cool.
playing. Yeah, it was insane, like, how it happened,
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
and our trainer, his name's Robert
Uh-huh.
Miller,
Dude, me and him go like way back. That is insane.
really? Yeah,
Oh my goodness. I'm gonna
yeah,
call him after
Rob's
this.
awesome.
I'm gonna when we're finished, I'm calling him, man.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
crazy. Okay, go on, go on.
Rob will have a crazy story to tell too. But yeah, so he was like, "This is the best thing that could have happened," because it's kinda like film, like, until you're in with that speed of play, it's hard to replicate. And
Mhm.
so I would say, like, advice for people playing ECNL or playing in college is just, like, playing with people older than you, playing with people at that higher level, because you it's so hard to replicate without, like, having to play that fast. You don't
Mhm.
realize. Like, when you're playing with people your age and your level, no one knows that, like, there's another level, but you haven't experienced it. And
Mhm.
so when you're tossed in and playing with players of that caliber and you're forced to play that quickly,
Mhm.
like, that helps so much. Um, Playing with them, like, I don't think I could have prepared better.
So it's having the confidence and the courage to decide when it's time to put yourself in a different position, which is going to be uncomfortable, definitely in the beginning.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I feel like that's a big thing for. I mean, you and I can probably talk about some other topics, but for example, for clubs that have players that the club is not in the highest league possible, but you
Mhm.
have players who have the potential, when do you have that conversation with that player about moving to another club, which
Yeah.
impacts you as a coach and impacts your club, but it's what's
Mhm.
best for the player. Like
Yeah,
that's a hard conversation to have, but at
that
the same
is.
time, what you just said is like if you're not doing it, it's not going to happen.
Mhm. Yeah.
So like currently what I've been doing is for certain players, especially the players that are like the girl players, like I actually encourage them to go train with the boys. So that
Mhm.
way it's just, a little bit
That's
different,
huge.
you
Yeah.
know?
I mean,
Um,
that's what Alyssa Thompson and Giselle Thompson,
right.
they played with the boys because they were so good, like, such on
Hmm.
another level that even, like, girls way older than them, like,
Hmm.
they needed to play with boys.
I mean, we can go back down the history of Mia Hamm.
Yeah.
and play with guys. Yeah,
Mhm.
so it's like, so maybe you're not in that current environment in terms of like consistency, where it's like you're in a certain like club and league, but until you get there, because what's funny is as a coach, you need to swallow your pride and your ego about having 4 or 5 Kelsey Hills at your practice and allowing those 4 or 5 Kelsey Hills to go train with the boys, whatever age, and then you focus on the rest of your teammates. And
Mhm.
it's not a matter of they're better and they're not, but it's like, what's your goal? Because
Yeah.
I think we can both agree, like, I'm not going to ask someone who is still figuring out their passion and they're just getting their confidence and this and that, and then go, hey, oh, hey, go play with like, some boy teams that are going to be rough and fast and maybe say some things that you're not going to like.
Mhm.
But again, like for yourself, if you were 14 playing at a club and there were boy teams around that were at a high level or at a good level, like that's a good way in the short term to solve that problem, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, for sure.
By the way, I'm like thinking about Rob right now. I'm like so stuck that Rob, man. Like,
Yeah.
when did I meet Rob? It was like I was 20, 26, 27.
Mhm.
I've known him for like definitely a decade almost. That
Yeah.
is so wild.
Yeah.
Does he have a
He's
kid
amazing.
now?
He helped me.
Does he?
No, no, he has
Okay,
a girlfriend.
okay.
Um, but he helped
I'm glad he
me.
settled down. I'm glad he
Yeah.
settled down.
He helped me so much with my hip, like,
Mm,
with the rehab and just, like, I would be super frustrated when Pepperdine would have a game and I obviously couldn't play. I would go and, like, lift at his gym and yeah, he's amazing.
yeah. You want to give a shout out to his gym and like all that kind of stuff? Like, 'cause I have his contact. I haven't talked to him. Actually, I think I hit him up like 4 or 5 months ago. But
Yeah.
I knew he had his own gym. I knew he started doing his own thing, which I was very excited for him to do that.
Mhm.
But yeah, you want to give a shout out to like his gym, where it's at, location, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, his gym is Phenom Sports Performance.
That's
It's
right.
in Westlake, so it's, like, right across from the Westlake YMCA, like, right
Hmm.
across the street over there. Um, and yeah, he's amazing.
Rob Miller,
I
man.
can't say.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
the legend.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I got like 2 or 3 more.
Mhm.
Okay, so what are some of the challenges as a player when there's a change with the head coach during a season, which you have gone through that now, at least at
Yeah.
the highest level? So, as players, whether it's your experience of like, or you reading the room or talking to other players, what are the challenges that as viewers, fans of the game, we don't see when, because regardless of why it happened and who it is, like just how does it impact the players?
Um, it's massive, like, I have all positive things to say about Freya and Angel City and everything.
Hmm.
But it was a complete change for us. Like our record before our change of head coach compared to now, like I think we're still unbeaten or something crazy like that.
Yeah,
Like,
it's a long run.
yes.
Congratulations, by the way.
Um thanks. Um but it just kinda changed everything, like, the whole dynamic of the team, even, like, just in the locker room, like, how the girls, women interacted with each other versus, like, after, it's just completely different, like, our film sessions are run differently.
Mm,
I feel like we really found our identity as a team of, like, how we defend, how we attack, like, this is how we play,
mhm.
and I think, honestly, that's what's helped us have, like, how we've been doing now.
Yeah, no, it's massive. So for someone who has competed at the Division 1 level and now you're competing in the NWSL, we mentioned like speed of play, but what are some other things that to be able to compete at the level you're at now, like that players aren't aware of, or even fans, because I feel like there's a lot of
Mhm.
sometimes people just hate and just they make it sound like it's easy, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I know it's not. I know it's not. And so,
Mhm.
but what are some things that, whether it's for fans to be aware of, like, yeah, these are some of the challenges we face, and also for like a player who's listening that's wanting to maybe get to that level. I know we mentioned speed, so that's kind of checked off the list, but
Mhm.
what else, like 1 or 2 things that are like, wow, like when I came here, this is what happened.
Yeah. One thing that's just kind of expected of us is fitness. Like,
Mm.
if you go in and you're unfit, there's no way that you're gonna,
I
like, make
love
it.
that. I love it. I love it.
Even I would say even in college, like, if you go in and you're fit and that's not even, like, questioned of you, I think as a coach too, it's like, "Oh, they're committed." Like, they worked in the summer, they're here in college, they're ready, they're fit. Like, the tactical things, like, we can mess with, the technical things we can grow,
Hmm.
but if you have that fitness, then, like, that's a huge building platform.
Mm.
And, like, obviously there's, like, fitness tests and stuff to test it, but it's just expected, like, especially in the pros, not as much in college. I feel like at the, like, higher level schools, it's expected, but
Hmm.
especially in the pros, like, it's just expected that you're fit and you should be able to run this whole time.
What's the?
Um,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
g oh, I was just gonna say the other thing is, like, acting in a professional way,
Mm.
like, even Paige Nielsen, a defender at Angel City, was talking about it. She has a podcast, and it's called In These Cleats.
Hmm. I love
And she
that.
was talking about it,
Hmm.
that, uh, it's just like you can be having, like, let's say you just had a horrible game, you lost or something, and you have to, like, go put a professional face on and go see all the fans and say thank you and sign, and, like, it's just, I think that part isn't, like, we are people and we could be having a horrible day and, like, a horrible game maybe, or horrible practice, and then still being able to, like, be professional and show up for the fans and show up for your teammates and stuff like that.
I was gonna say, and that's a great point that you mentioned at the end. What is the best way, or what is a way that if a coach said to your team, "We're gonna do fitness," so here I'll actually give it to you what I would say, and I'm curious your response as a player.
Mhm.
I would say we're doing fitness because the mental hurdle that you have to go through to do it is like just you don't want to do it. I don't want you to do it. I'd rather us
Mhm.
play rondos and do possession drills and do shooting. Do you think I want to watch you sprint for the next 15, 20 minutes in
Yeah.
training? Like, no. But will that make you a little bit more resilient? And will that maybe piss you off a little bit that we're having to do this? And so then when the game comes, it's like you don't even think about it because you just did it and you did it for 15 minutes in practice. So now when the game comes, you're not even gonna think about it, you're just gonna do it now. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I would say it, but like what, because I definitely I would say don't quote unquote run my teams a lot. Like I don't do
Mhm.
punishments. I don't do like if we have a bad session, I don't go, okay, we're on the line, let's do some sprints. Like that's no. Um so what would you say would be a good way for a coach to present to a team like this is why we need to do fitness?
Mhm. Um,
Regardless, not everyone's gonna be on board regardless. Like they're
yeah,
still gonna have the two or
yeah,
three who are like, screw this. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
like,
they're still gonna be upset about
of
it.
course, but like someone like yourself who obviously loves the game and you're there, you're committed. What would you go like? Yeah, that makes sense.
Um, I mean, I think what you said, like, you need it. If
Mm.
we like, something like, if we do this now and you're prepared, then in the game, it won't even be a thought. And I feel like especially, like, when players are tired, like, the technical just goes out the window. So if
Mm.
you're
Yeah.
physically prepared and you're ready, then I feel like the game will just be so much more fun because you're not worried about your fitness in the game. And
Mm.
that's, like, the most important part anyway, like, that's why we play, is to play games. So if you're fit in practice and you get your fitness over with, then in the game, you don't have to worry about it, you get to play, and it's, like, not a
Mm.
worry of, like, "Man, I'm tired, like, I don't know if I can get back after this one," or something like that.
So it's like almost like one less stressor. Like
Yes.
you're trying to,
Mhm.
yeah, because I mean, at least for me, like I want players to feel free when they play, and you're
Yeah.
not going to feel free if you're almost like imprisoning yourself by going, oh, now I gotta go do this and I gotta worry about this.
Mhm.
So, and the reason why it's funny, it's so funny we're having this conversation because we had our first league game this weekend, and I just felt like, man, like we're not fit, and we
Mhm.
still played amazing, but it's like, yeah, but you know, you play, so it's like there's like a drop off, and it's just like
Yeah.
so I had to I actually made a few phone calls because I was just like, I knew what I had to do, but I was trying to find a way out. Because and it's funny,
Mhm.
both coaches were like, you have to do what you don't want to do. Like you
Mhm.
have to run them in a healthy way, and you got to explain to them why. And so yeah, anyway, so it was pretty much like one coach was like, well, this coach told me this, and this coach told me that, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. Like, so yeah, you have to position it into a way that they understand. But again, like we just said, like you're still gonna have like two or three players who are
Yeah.
like, yeah, whatever, coach. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
nah,
Yeah.
nah, no, you're gonna enjoy watching us. Like, no, I don't. It's boring for me, man. Like, um,
Yeah.
okay, so like, final question. So someone would look at you and say like you've reached like you made it. So like, but for you, what are some of your like short-term goals and like long-term goals, regardless of the fact that you are signed as a contracted player with Angel City?
Um, Short term would be getting re-signed somewhere.
Mm,
Um, I'm thinking about probably playing somewhere in the off season to just get minutes, like, as a defender,
hmm.
if you're not playing like, you don't play the whole game. We don't really sub defenders, so,
That's a whole
going
nother
off.
conversation right there. I love that. We'll
Yeah.
table that for later, but keep going, keep going.
Yeah, so hopefully playing somewhere in the off season to just get minutes and professional time and experience. And then, yeah, getting re-signed somewhere and having, like, a full season to play somewhere would be amazing. So that's kinda the short term, and then long term, I wanna get to a place where, like, I'm starting, I'm playing the whole game, like,
Hmm.
and then an NWSL championship.
That's the pinnacle, right?
Yeah.
Gotta get those chips.
Mhm.
All right, so I just asked you a ton of questions, and I'm still laughing that we both know Rob. That's so funny. What a small
Yeah.
world. So gonna FaceTime him after this and see if he picks up.
Yeah.
He's probably training, but is there a question or two questions that you have that you know you can like flip the script on me and ask a question that I can maybe answer or give you my experience from?
Yeah, I actually coach a club team also. They're like
What?
14-year-old. Yeah.
Ooh,
Before I
where?
got Steel United,
Yeah, yeah. Which one?
we're the girls '08
Are you in
elite
Bakersfield or are you
premier. Oh,
which?
no, in Westlake, Thousand Oaks area.
Oh, okay. So is it with Sam?
Yes. Yeah, it's his,
What a
like,
small world. Yeah, 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 I know. Yeah,
um,
yeah. Sam's the
second
man.
team.
Sam's the man.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
We go way back. He was at Real back in the day when I was at the Eagles. And we
Mhm.
were like, everyone was like, oh, you guys are kind of the same in terms of how you coach. And then, yeah, anyways, long story short, but keep going. So wait, so you're still coaching now?
Yes.
Okay,
So
okay, okay.
before I got signed,
Hmm.
I was like, "I need to make money so I could stay here and train with them."
Right, okay.
And so, I'm coaching this team, and so I guess my question is, like, what's the hardest part of coaching for you? And
Mm.
what's the best advice you could give of coaching a team?
How long have you been coaching now? Is this your first team or?
When I was at Pepperdine, I was an assistant coach at Calabasas High School with Rob. He was the head coach, and JV, I was the
Ah,
assistant.
yeah, yeah.
And so this is my first, like, head coach. And I've always, like, trained
Mhm.
individuals, like, done individual training, but this is my first head coaching job.
Oof. Just talk to them.
Mhm.
Like it's so hard, but it's the most basic innate human function is like communication. And so I'm sure you've experienced it, whether it's coaches you've had in the past or even yourself at times, you get like, you know, that competitive inside you. And I feel like the coaches who can stay the calmest and ask really good questions. So for example, like let's say your O8 team is having kind of an off training session.
Mhm.
Like, can you pull them in and say, is this how we want to prepare for the weekend? And then someone is like a Kelsey Hill is going to say, well, no. And then you say, well, then what does it look like to prepare for the weekend? And then they're like, oh, well, yeah, like sprinting, like balls my feet, pumping my arms, like getting my looks in. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I would say talk, and just ask really good questions, because then also too, I feel like the players will give you more, regardless of your stature in the game. Like they're gonna like you're human, and like
Yeah.
you're gonna make mistakes. And even today, we're gonna have a probably like a 15-20 minute talk before training, because still certain things weren't buttoned up the way they should be, especially on the sideline. Like you gotta be locked in. If you're not starting, like are you helping? Are you like do you
Mm-hmm.
care just as much as the players who are in? And why don't you? And how can I help you? So, and even as someone who's been coaching for 15 years, like you still have your moments where you get amped up and someone's got to almost like I definitely flipped my board probably twice on Saturday afternoon. Like when I say I flipped it, I'm sitting on the bench and like I just like like I didn't like throw it in the air, hit the tent, like you know what I mean? I just like flipped it. And like
Yeah.
and even then you look back on like you don't like don't do that. And so you still are a little bit of who you are just because how much you care. But I would say just talk to them. And I actually thought about creating those bands where it says just talk. So it's like a reminder, like you look down and it
Mm-hmm.
says just talk. And then ask really good questions. Yeah. And anything else? Coach, I didn't know you're coaching your OA team. That's so cool, man.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's it. That was a good answer though.
Thank you. Um, well, I honestly, I say this a lot, but I definitely want to do a part two because I feel like there's so many other questions that we can dive into, especially that defending
Hmm.
piece about why, because yeah, that's an interesting topic. Because yeah, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's unfair, but like, yeah, if you're a striker or attacking mid, like more often than
Yeah.
not, you're gonna probably get subbed in, especially poor goalies. Like, I mean, it's almost like striking, attacking, defenders, goalies. Like that's almost like the
Yeah.
game, right?
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I just want to say, thank you for your time. I know you're really busy with everything. You're playing, you're coaching. I'm sure you
Hmm.
have other activities. So thank you for your time. I'll definitely be in touch with a part two.
Yeah,
But
for
yeah, I
sure.
just wanted to say thank you again. So
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on. You asked amazing questions.
thank you so much. I appreciate it.